infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
On this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Greg Roberts back on with me, and he is out of Oregon, and his Facebook page, I'm assuming that he still has, I will ask him as soon as I'm done with this probably far too long intro, is Southern Oregon Bigfoot Seeker, and he goes under that name. Now, his first visit with Into the Fray was 425. I titled that How Cleverly, Bigfoot of Oregon. And he told in that episode, here's a little teaser in case anyone wants to go back and listen to that. He did talk about his very first encounter, which he didn't realize till later on was really a Bigfoot, was in 1984. He talks about another encounter during a hunt where he actually had twice something basically tell him in his head, don't come up here. And of course, there were sightings and experiences after that. And now he is back for an update show. And I am very happy to finally be done with my intro. I apologize, Greg, and say hello. Thank you for doing this yet again.
Oh, happy to be on with you. Had so much fun the first time. Definitely picked up people who heard that first one. And they started following me at Southern Oregon Bigfoot Seeker. But the fun part was I got up to the Glide Bigfoot Festival last year, 2024, and I was sitting talking to Michael Freeman, and then Scott Villette and Hannah Villette from Squatch America were right there too. So we're talking, and people would come up and look at me and listen to me and go, I know who you are. You were on with Shannon and Into the Fray. So, by the way, of all of these type of shows that I have done, yours is the only one that I've had that kind of feedback from, that people literally have seen me out in public and said, I heard you on with Shannon. So you got that going for you.
Hey, goodness gracious. Who would have thought? That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Greg.
No, I love it. And I love the fact that, people, they're really bought in. And, of course, when it comes to Bigfoot believers and knowers, that's not too uncommon. But the other better comment came from people going, I really didn't believe, but you gave me something to think about. That is what I am after.
So you emailed me and you said that you tried. Now, I don't want to jump the gun if this needs to be covered at some other point later on, if you wanted to go in succession of however you wanted to start. But the reason you emailed was for something very specific that you tried out in the field. So now, you know me, I'm like, wherever you want to start, so you go right ahead.
Okay. So I'll get into this. We've got a lot of evidence, anecdotal, some other things, observational, that there is a relationship between coyotes and Bigfoot. I definitely have seen that out here in Oregon. So I don't even question that. My bigger question is we're getting more and more wolves on the landscape in Oregon. How exactly do wolves and Bigfoot interact? And I can't find anywhere where that's being well documented. I tried reaching out to Abe and the guys at Minnesota Bigfoot because I have heard recordings from them that had wolves howling and Bigfoot vocalizations in them. And I thought, hell, if anybody knows, it's Abe and those guys. Never heard back from them. So I kind of kept pondering this. And then last year in February, a guy who had been following me on my Bigfoot page showed up and said, hey, I was talking about wolves. Because wolves are another specialty of mine. I've served on government committees out here. I've been speaker doing witness testimony for government agencies where it comes to wolves, been a source for multiple public elected officials talking about wolves. So I was doing a talk about wolves, and this guy who had been following my Bigfoot stuff reached out to me and said, "Hey, I can bring my wolf to you for your talk." And I'm like, "Well, okay, let's see what he's got." So I'm like, "Sure." And I was pretty blown away when I saw what he had. He has a 78% northern timber wolf. The other 22% is Malamute German Shepherd. And what you got was an animal with all the coloring of a wolf, with the bulk of a wolf, weighs 165 pounds. The only way I could tell it wasn't a wolf was the shorter doggy legs and the doggy ears. Otherwise, you look at that thing and that's a wolf. And this animal was named Appa. Tolerated being in public spaces very well. The most mellow, well-behaved, high percentage wolf dog I've ever seen in my life. Um, especially women and girls, loves the attention. He doesn't get threatened by anything. He basically will just lay down at his owner's feet. As he got to know me, lay down on my feet and just be totally relaxed and mellow. And the more I was around him, the more I kept thinking, that's probably about as close to a wolf as I'm going to be able to get. And what if took him out into my encounter zone and see how my family group reacts? So I talked to Mark, I explained what I wanted to do, and Mark said, "Hey, I'm down for this," because he's into Bigfoot too. His brother Chris came along to help handle Appa. And so we set out late August and went out one night, and the whole basic idea was going to be take him to one of my best encounter spots, and then let's see what's going to wind up happening with him between Bigfoot or if the native wild wolves of the area show up. And you set out and you have a lot of hope, but you don't really know for sure what's going to happen. And the first good positive sign of what was going to happen is I have been out there in the field with them, Bigfoot, since 2011. That's when the first encounter happened with them. And then over time, got to know this one family group in particular, developed a relationship with them. And I had never seen one on the side of the road or cross the road in front of me. It never happened. So we're driving in this night, going to my encounter spot. And all of a sudden, I come around this bend in the road, and there's this black shape on the left-hand side of the road, more like a shadow where there shouldn't be one. And I'm looking at that and thinking, that's really weird. How is that? And all of a sudden, head moves, and I'm looking at these two big yellow eyes looking right down at me. And then just in one move, that thing was off the road and down the bank. And I was like, oh man. Again, like so much of what's happened to me, that wasn't what I was expecting. And I almost would have thought I had imagined that, except we get up the road a little bit, and then there's this wide spot in the road over on the shoulder. So I pulled over, jumped out, and Mark and Chris have Appa in a van that he's always, going out and driving around with him in. And I go back and I told Mark exactly what I saw. And he said, you should have seen Appa. He goes, right when we were getting to that spot, all of a sudden he's coming up to the front of the van and he's wanting to get out the window on the driver's side door. And he's looking exactly in the direction of what I saw and where it went. Then, as Mark's telling me this, Chris is saying Appa wants out. And Mark said, okay, let him out, get him on the lead. And so as soon as they come out of the van, Appa goes around the vehicles, and then he gets over at the edge of that wide cutout area, and he's just staring intently down into the darkness in the direction that thing went. And I'm watching him and going, he's hearing something down there. He knows that thing is down there. And I could have considered the whole night a success right there just based on what happened. But we go ahead, we keep going, we get to where I wanted to get set up. And I don't do anything at all. I don't do any vocalizations. I don't do whoops. I don't do tree knocks. We just announced our presence by slamming vehicle doors. And then we sat up in our folding camp chairs and we just sat there in the darkness and waited. And we had Appa down in front of us. Only took 20 minutes. And all of a sudden he comes up. He's on full alert and he starts staring down into the woods. And I told Mark, I said, here we go. He's hearing something. And we started hearing bipedal footsteps coming up through the woods at us, and kept watching him, kept looking, kept trying to see if we could see anything through the therms and the night vision equipment. The problem is in August, those woods hold so much radiant heat in the rocks, in the trees. Therms aren't exactly the magic bullet you hope they're going to be, because especially in the summer, you've just got so much ambient heat coming off of everything. It's really hard to see them. And I think they're starting to figure that part out, because we're starting to see people use more thermal technology out there. And I think they're kind of realizing we're doing something different out there in the dark, which makes them more cautious. But in this case, Appa was the attractor. They couldn't figure out what a wolf was doing with us, even though they knew me. Then here's these two other guys, and we've got a wolf. And they started approaching in, and you could hear it, the crunch, crunch, bipedal. And I was looking through a night vision scope, a traditional one, and I heard us being approached. And I looked in that direction, and all of a sudden, through the trees, I see these two big eyeballs looking up at me. And then it turns and it moves, and I can hear it moving. And then it got quiet again, and I couldn't hear it as much. And I look over at Mark and Appa's on full alert, looking right where I had just been. I got a picture of this I probably need to send you. And the look on Mark's face, priceless. So as we kept sitting there going on through the night, we kept being approached at various times. We could hear them. We could actually feel it. Mark's going, there's things here. And I said, oh yeah, they're definitely here. And I said, because they're trying to figure out him. And I was pointing at Appa. Appa went on full alert, and he never relaxed for over 2 hours. He kept pivoting his position, and we could tell he was looking at something, or he was hearing it, smelling it, or all three things. But he was on full alert for over 2 hours. And then right at the very end, the wind started coming up a little bit. And when the wind came up a little bit, they started moving in even closer to us, with having the wind to disguise their movement. But Appa wasn't fooled by any of it. And he kept pivoting and looking. And when they got real close, he decided, that's it, I'm done. He wanted in that van, and he got in the back of that van, and he cowered down. And Mark's going, I've never seen him do that before. We've been with bears. He's been in a fight with a cougar, and we've had cougars on our place, and they live in a rural property in Josephine County. And he goes, he's never acted like this before. And I went, okay, let's get him out of here. Traumatizing him was not part of what I wanted to do. And so I had thought, we may be out there all night. Nope. We were over and done in 2.5 hours, and I saw everything I needed to know. That animal absolutely could see them, could hear them, and could smell them, even when we couldn't. And mostly for us, it was hearing. I saw it through night vision. Mark had a quick glimpse of something in the therm getting behind a tree and moving. But that roadside encounter and seeing one standing on the side of the road, yeah, that wound up being probably the most epic experience I had had since the first encounter.
And when Appa was on high alert for that first couple of hours, was he tethered that entire time?
Yeah. Yeah, we kept him on a lead because Mark was really concerned about what would happen if he might run off chasing something or if he got scared and bolted, because we do have wild wolves out there on the landscape. It wasn't so much being concerned about Bigfoot, it was definitely being concerned about the wolves living out there. And we all watch these videos, Small Town Monsters, the other videos, and everybody goes armed. I don't typically go armed. I did that night because what happens if the wolves of that area happen to show up and we get into a serious situation, and I wanted to have a discourager. But honestly, that is the only time I've ever been armed in my life, going out on a Bigfoot encounter, and that was directly so I could better protect Appa.
And Appa, it seems, would weigh more than most of the adult male wolves of that area, right?
Yeah, on average, yeah, he would be significantly bigger, but on the other hand, I think he's got the right mix of a lot of things to produce a superior sized animal. He's got that northern timber wolf, but he does have the Malamute, big frame dog. He's got the shepherd in him, also another big frame dog, and it just looks like all the genetics maximized with him to produce this truly big animal. But like I said, he's pretty docile and gentle as a lamb, which just, it continues to blow my mind. Like I said, he is definitely the highest percentage wolf animal I've ever been around, who literally had more the disposition of a poodle. No joke.
So the thought was that the Bigfoot would recognize, hey, the hairless things are hanging out with one of those other things that I know is always in the woods, and I don't tend to go around them. We just have a mutual respect of each other. I'm just assuming, I'm placing my own mind on it, but so that was the thought, because obviously you could have been like, well, let me just take a mastiff out there, some other big dog. But the thought was to go, no, we're going to throw a wrench in this, and Appa looks like a wolf, so maybe it will throw the Bigfoot for a slight loop.
Yeah, and that was the full intention. Finding Bigfoot, we saw Bobo take Monkey out, rip Monkey, great dog, by the way, take Monkey out a lot. We saw how Monkey reacted, but you don't really see a lot of people incorporating dogs, and nobody has ever done this, incorporated something that looks so much like a wolf. And like I said, a lot of what I've done, a lot of the breakthroughs I've had is because first I did the anti-human thing and then drop something on them they had never seen before. So play on their curiosity factor. And the presence of Appa with us maximized their curiosity to the point where they were making repeated close approaches, because again, I think they were just trying to get their minds around, there's a wolf, we know Greg, and there's two other men, and why is the wolf there?
Now, has Appa ever acted like that before? Even just when Mark and Chris or whoever's with Appa, they take the dog out for camping or fishing or whatever it might be?
Yeah, he goes out into well, I don't want to say wilderness, but he definitely gets out into forest areas. And again, he's been in the presence of bears, cougars, coyotes. And Mark said, I've never seen the reactions that I'm seeing out of him on the night it was happening. He goes, just never. And when he jumped up in the van and cowered in the back of the van, Mark and Chris were both just like, whoa.
Yeah, full-blown never.
New.
Yeah, full-blown never for a cower like that, for a dog that's used to being out in the wilds, is pretty wild, actually. I'm sure that Mark and Chris were also going, oh my goodness, this is an anomaly.
Yeah, and Mark and Chris were also dealing with the fact they're having these really intense Bigfoot encounters. Mark had had a Bigfoot encounter, I want to say that was 1980s over in Josephine County, but that was a totally different thing. This, how they were approaching, how they were behaving, and he said, my goosebump factor, everything. He goes, that was intense. Then I said, yeah, that was very intense. But again, they're coming to get a better look because it isn't so much about us. If it had just been the three of us sitting out here, probably no big deal. We might have heard some whoops and tree knocks when they heard me talking. But Appa, that was the total game changer. And it's still, it's one of those things that, I don't know what made me really get onto that thought process and go, yeah, this is what we're going to do. That just kind of built up over a period of time. The more I was around Appa, and I started thinking about, well, I've always tried to find out what's this possible interaction level between wolves and Bigfoot. Certainly got a better look at that. And no, he was far more aware than we were about what they were doing. Absolutely. No question in my mind.
What a wonderful idea that was, Greg. It sounds like you need to get yourself a hybrid.
Here's the thing. I would dearly love to have one, but where I'm living at right now, honestly, it's small dog. We have 5 cats, if that tells you anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think if you're going to get a hybrid, here's what I truly believe. You need space, because regardless of what percentage it is, but the higher percentage it is, the stronger the impulse is. Wolves want to get out. They want to roam. And even if you only have a 10 to 20% wolf dog, that wolfy instinct about wanting to roam is going to be there. So I tell people, if you're going to have hybrids, first have enough space. Make sure you can enclose it to keep the animal where you want to keep him, because believe me, they'll take off and they'll go roaming all over. And again, especially high percentage hybrids. When I was on the Jackson County Wolf Committee here, we had an individual who had a real high percentage wolf dog that lived out in an area called Weimar. We were getting reports from people saying they were seeing a wolf all the time. We go out there and investigate it, and every single time it was that hybrid, that wolf dog that was just out roaming. And he, I'm not kidding, would run 20 to 30 miles, come back home every time. Wolf dogs will do that. And that unfortunately can lead to conflicts with people. But it's their nature. And then the other thing is, never get a hybrid thinking you're getting a dog. If they've got any percentage of wolf in them, you have a wolf. And you definitely approach a wolf differently than you approach a dog. And people will get these hybrids, and all of a sudden they got an animal they can't control in all kinds of ways, and it starts eating them out of house and home. And then sadly, the next thing that happens, they take it out in the woods and dump them off. And that's unfortunate in all kinds of ways right now. The worst part is, even if they revert and go wild again, they're still hybrids, and they know people mean food, and they got no problem with approaching people where a real, true 100% wild wolf would. And so, yeah, you also set up the potential for something really bad to happen between a hybrid that's been released and humans, because again, that hybrid just doesn't have the fear that a true wolf would.
So with that encounter that Appa seems to have especially initiated that night, how close do you think they got? And is there a guess on how many of them might have come in?
We were thinking we had at least 4, and when Appa went bailing into the van and said, "That's it, I'm done, I've had enough," they were probably within Well, I'm not gonna say 20 to 30 yards because that doesn't mean anything. But when you start doing your math, 60 to 90 feet, just right up behind some trees, right above us.
I wonder what they thought too. They're like that wolf is running into that van. It just got into that guy's car. Like that's weird, right?
Yeah. Now that part, I'd have to be part of the family group to know exactly what they were thinking at that point. But when he went and got in the van, I was like, okay, I don't want to get him that freaked out. So I told Mark, I said, we're done. And we were, because I had accomplished everything I had set out to do anyway. Here's the backstory to that. Mark and Chris, they get home. And then the next day, Mark is cleaning up the van. He's got the doors open. Appa's across the yard. Normally, when Mark's doing that kind of thing with the van, Appa runs, jumps in. It's like, okay, Dad, where are we going? He avoided that when he avoided the van for over a week. Wouldn't get near it.
That is one smart pup. So now all of a sudden he has trauma attached to the van as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
He had the trauma attached to the van. Over a period of weeks, he finally got over that, and they took an outing in September out to the coast, and Mark sending me pictures and videos of Appa enjoying himself in the van and out at the coast. Then I also wondered, how's he going to react the next time he sees me? Well, last Saturday, Mark and Chris happened to have Appa over here, so we got together at a local watering hole that allows minors. So my daughter was able to go, and Appa still, as soon as I sat down, he comes over, starts pressing up on me, wanting loves. He's paying a lot of attention to my daughter because he's a ladies' man. And he was fine. I was wondering if he might associate me with that, but nope, he's back to being himself. When I talked about this on Southern Oregon Bigfoot Seeker, I had two people immediately go, well, you need to take Appa around in the woods and then let him tell you when a Bigfoot's around. And I'm like, no, I don't. I know right where they are. I have a relationship with this family group. I don't need to go seeking out anything new. I've already got what I got. And I'm not going to turn Appa into some kind of bait to further provoke other encounters. Because I don't believe in that. I saw what I wanted to see, period. Anything else I might learn about wolf Bigfoot dynamics is going to come because I'm going to be out on the landscape and I get lucky to be right place, right time with my Bigfoot family group, and our local wolf pack happen to be right there. And then through observation, either by sight or listening, try to pick up exactly on what's going on there. But, way back in the day when my daughter was a baby, I can't even begin to tell you how many people said, take your daughter out. You're going to. No, never ever used my daughter as bait. And did that one time with Appa, and that's it.
Now, what about the next time you went out to make contact with this family group? You don't have Appa. I don't know if you went out by yourself or with new people or the same folks that you normally go out with. Was anything different, or did they come in maybe closer than you thought they would again because maybe they were looking for this anomalous creature that they didn't expect to be hanging out with the hairless things?
Well, the next outing was actually with, and I think you've had him on the show, was with Bart Catino. And Bart has been wanting to get back to me with my encounter zone for a long time. He's been in there before. He said, this is the best habitat I have seen for them outside of the Olympics. And I totally agree. I've gotten to know the guys in the Olympic Project. I've watched the videos. I've seen exactly what they're in. And I look at my encounter area and go, yeah, I know why Bart said that now. Well, Bart joined me middle of September up there. We went to a spot that I call Bigfoot Hill because there are two tree bends and a tree break. The bends and the break go right into the road that goes in. And we discovered this road actually because of deer hunting. So I take Bart there and I'm showing him the bends and he's going, that's amazing. He goes, I saw the videos. He goes, it's more amazing when you see it in person. Show him the break. We're standing there and I look down the road and all of a sudden there's a new tree bend. So on this thing I call Bigfoot Hill, there are now 3 tree bends, 1 break, all of them pointing into the road. Bart goes, yeah, that's not coincidence. That's by design. Early in August, I did a Bigfoot outing with a current U.S. Forest Service employee and another individual. The Forest Service employee, as soon as he saw the tree bends, he goes, that's not natural. Nothing natural did that. And I said, yeah, and humans didn't do that either. There's no chain marks, there's no cable marks like from a winch. And this Forest Service employee looked at it and he goes, I'll tell you another reason why I know humans didn't do it. And I said, do tell. And he goes, to get that kind of a bend in the tree, to exert the force, they would have actually ripped those trees out of the ground. Forest Service employee telling me this. And he goes, I've got to start paying more attention when I'm out going through the woods because his job is in silviculture. He marks out thinning projects. He marks out logging areas that they're going to do because they are different in what they want to accomplish between thinning and logging. Although most people just think it looks the same, it's not. And he said, I'm going to be paying more attention out there. And this Forest Service employee has had at least 2 direct encounters with my family group because he sent me GPS coordinates of where his encounters happened, right smack in the middle of my family group's territory. So he knew they were out there. Well, anyway, Bart, when we left Bigfoot Hill, we went over to the spot where we took Appa. One thing happened, and it was pretty interesting. You were talking about what happened with the family group. Well, Bart and I are sitting there. Bart's talking, and all of a sudden, downhill from me, I hear the whoop. And I told Bart, I go, did you hear that? He goes, what? I go, we got whooped at. And then I did the whoop back. That was it. That was the only thing that happened. And Bart's talking, and he totally missed the first whoop. But basically, one of the family group came by, heard me, said hello. I said hello back, and that was that.
Yeah, I guess you guys weren't quite as interesting that time, but that's all right. That's how it goes, right? I mean,
yeah, no,
you just can't have it every time.
That happens with me a lot because they're so used to me being there that, you know, I'll get the, hey, Greg, how you doing kind of thing. And then a lot of times you just sit there and that'll be it for the night. Then other times, other far more interesting things happen. Now, the road that has Bigfoot Hill on it had one more encounter in store for me, and that happened in October at the beginning of our deer season. I was with buddy of mine I've been hunting with now for 4 years and my brother-in-law. I was getting out of my buddy's Suburban at this point I wanted to be dropped off at. I'm starting to get my stuff arranged. I look up in the road in front of me, and something on 2 legs walks out of the trees on the side of the road, got halfway in the road, and I'm sure looked at us, turned, and immediately went back, got on and off that road way faster than any human would have. And I'm like, oh man. And my buddy was driving. He was turned looking into the back of the vehicle, but my brother-in-law saw it. And I said, did you see that? And my brother-in-law said, yeah, I saw movement on the road. And I said, well, what did you see? And he goes, I'm not sure, but I know what I saw. It was upright on 2 legs, came out of the trees, gets in the middle of the road, sees us, turns and goes back. That was no man. Positive. Too tall, moving in a way humans don't move. And so, yeah, I literally, since 2011 to this year, have been driving all through these roads, usually in the middle of the night, and had never seen one standing on the side of the road or in the road. And now this year, I've had both things happen. One on the side of the road, one walked right into the middle of the road, turned and went back. So yeah, 2025 turned out to be a very epic year for me for Bigfoot, without any question.
What were you guys hunting at that time?
Deer. Yeah, we were about 6,000 foot in elevation, and out here in Oregon, that's a pretty high elevation hunt, especially down here in Southern Oregon. We've had bucks in there before, so we knew right where we wanted to be. But it's just one of those things. Hunters see them far more often than probably anybody else. The trick is getting hunters to actually be willing to talk about what they saw. Because just in that last thing I told you, you've got me, pretty doggone good idea exactly what I saw. And then you have my brother-in-law who's like, I'm not sure what I saw, because even in his head, he knows me, he's heard my stories, he still can't wrap his head around it. And then one walks right out in the road, probably 400 yards away from us, turns and goes back. And I know my brother-in-law is still trying to wrap his head around what he saw, but we both saw it.
Well, I can imagine that because, I mean, let's face it, the MO of hunting is, sure, you have a nice, large rifle with you, but the whole point is you are spreading out from your friends or your family who you are hunting with, and you are all by yourself. So if you say out loud, oh, that mythical creature that can weigh 800 to 1,000 pounds, that's real. Oh, okay, see in 4 miles or 5 miles. It's a large pill to swallow.
Well, and the more surprising thing was the fact I'm unloading, I'm getting my stuff, I'm getting everything that I need. I'm at the vehicle's running, and the thing walked out in the road and then spotted us. I think for most hunters, what's far more common, you're walking out through the woods, and especially the way we hunt deer around here, you'll walk for a bit, sit down, and then you're totally quiet. And the way most guys go about it, they're usually sitting for at least an hour, sometimes longer. Woods totally quiet down. They forget all about the fact you were there. Then a Bigfoot comes in that maybe when you got there was miles away, has no idea you're there, and then it comes walking through, and people have these sightings, and they're just sitting there being quiet. Because I agree with Cliff Barrickman. I think the way they acquire us, in a sensory way, hearing. They hear us far more than they're going to see us or smell us. And especially hunters now, you throw scent killer on, you're wearing scent killer clothing, you're just sitting there being quiet, and they have no idea that you're even there. And sometimes you get these guys report very close encounters with them. I've also talked to 3 guys that put their rifles up looking at them through a scope and said there was no way I could pull the trigger. That thing looked too human.
Now, forgive me if we covered this on the last episode, but have you found an area where your family group inhabits that you took a step and you go, nope, this is a no zone. This is too far, and you just retreated back, whatever that might mean, if it's their birthing area or their literal living room or whatever it might be?
I'm going to say yes, but not where I have my encounter zone. I'm going to say yes because I have a really good idea where they're going in the winter, and the winter's just hard enough on all kinds of things. I think they're probably in a different frame of mind about what's going on in the winter, and I don't want to add any more stress. I don't mind going to have encounters with them in the summer and the fall when the living's easy and there's abundant food and their stress level is really low, and now they know me, so there's no stress at all. And so I have my time of the year from the end of July to the beginning of October. I try to go have as many encounters with them as I possibly can. Now, where I can go and get is pretty limited compared to where they can go. because they're always going to cover far more distance than we're going to be able to. But I've got these 3 different spots where if they're around, going to have a real high likelihood of having an encounter happen with them. Doesn't happen every time, again, because their territory is huge and it includes a big chunk of a wilderness area that the only way you access it is walking into it or riding in on horses. Ironically enough, the same wilderness area where I had my first experience in 1984, and now I truly believe that experience was more than likely what now is still my same family group, because when they have these areas where they know they're safe, they know they're secure, they've got great food, I think they come back to those areas frequently. And that's another part of the trick of what I've done that a lot of people going out don't do. I've been going back to the same area since 2011. I've gotten about as familiar with it as they probably are. That also helps me see the more subtle signs of their activity in the area so I can get a better sense of if they're around these encounter zones that I've got and what exactly is going on. How are our berry crops looking? And man, this year the berry crops were great. So they really honed in on the encounter zone because there was just so much food there. No, I don't believe they are type A predators throughout the year. They're omnivores like we are, like bears are. I have a lot of bears in this area too. If you're finding a lot of evidence of bears in an area, probably pretty good likelihood there is a Bigfoot family group also working that area. Um, so, the just knowing their pattern and knowing when they're going to be where, when has helped me out a lot. And then keep going back to the same area. I will not chase encounter reports. Don't need to.
Since you've been going to that same area since 2011, how many or have you had any impression of juveniles being introduced into the family group?
Yeah, have had, I got to think about this. Obviously, the first encounter, because it was the kids soft tossing the pine cones and the rocks at me, trying to see how I would react. We've definitely footprint finds all the time to indicate they're there. Um, Outside of that first encounter, I have seen juveniles at least 4 times I can remember right now. The juveniles are never alone either. Um, and juveniles, I mean true juveniles. Think of it like kids. Um, the younger adult males, those teenage 20 something year old males, definitely have more sightings and awareness of them being present because I just believe they're not really too far different than young adult human males. They get a little full of themselves, they get a little more brazen, they're a little more willing to push boundary lines. In fact, I just had a report from a lady during our elk season that was just a couple weeks ago. She had a middle of the day, bright sun, full on sighting of one of the younger adult males in the family group. As soon as she told me where she was at, I knew exactly where it was. And I think part of what led to her encounter, she's driving down the road in her pickup, she's got her music on. The young male, hears her going, she can't possibly be hunting. It's not a threat. I think he was pretty certain he was hidden from view, but he was in these vine maples, and vine maples pretty typically will top out at around 5 feet at the top of the vegetation. When she saw him, he was a good 2 feet taller than the top of the vine maples. So I said, about 7 feet. And she said, yes. And she described him as being a mocha brown. And she said, he started moving. And she said, I had this sense that he took this surge, this kind of leap like he might have been clearing a log. And I said, good instinct. He probably was. And then she said he froze and he turned and looked down towards me at the road. And then he turned and immediately bolted off. And I said, okay, here's what I think happened. He probably thought he was out of your view. Then when he realized he was in your view, he immediately left. Her reaction, though, what she described, she broke down in tears. And that's a pretty common thing when I talk to people who've had encounters with them, especially their first one, and never expecting they're going to have one, both men and women. I've had them break down in tears. Everything she described was spot on. I had no doubt she saw one of the young males in the family group in the middle of the day, 12 noon, bright sunshine, in the middle of elk season, when most people would probably think you would never see one. She did.
Now, do you think that she was crying because it was a huge paradigm shift or out of a little bit of fear?
Both. Because
Yeah.
she admitted, she said, I wasn't a believer. I mean, she lives here in the area. She's heard the stories. You can't not hear Bigfoot stories in Southern Oregon. This is just one of those places. It's like Northern California. It's like Humboldt, the Bluff Creek area, Willow Creek area. This is one of these spots. Even if you don't believe, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about Bigfoot encounters that happen to them out in the woods. You just do.
Does your group clear out of that area certain times of the year? Have you noticed patterns with them?
Yep. Yeah, they definitely, once October hits and the hunting seasons really pick up, they move down lower in elevation and they get into this canyon that a human to go into, I can't think of any reason why a rational person would. And then as the snow really starts piling up, they drop down, they get into this wintering area where the deer and elk go. And that's where I think they do get more predatory in the winter because the protein helps sustain them. So they will start killing deer and elk. And when you find one of those kills, they're very specific about what they want. They want the protein rich organs, which will include the brain actually. And then they want the marrow out of the bones because the marrow in the bones is very protein packed. They leave a lot of flesh tissue behind them. And I think that explains part of the relationship between them and coyotes. Coyotes know if you follow them around, you eventually wind up getting great meals with no effort.
Do you feel like you've ever made a mistake with them?
It's funny. The one time I truly thought maybe I didn't hurt the relationship with them. And I don't know if we talked about it in the first episode, but we'll talk about it now. I had a group of people with me, and I decided one night we're going to do the messing with Sasquatch approach. And here's what I wanted to do. I had my buddy Tommy Graham, who can do Bigfoot vocalizations very well, and myself. And then we had this young couple with us and their dog. And then I had my friend James Monson, who had video equipment set up for night vision. And what I decided I was going to do, I was going to park my pickup in the spot, leave the dog in it. James was going to get in a blind, in cover, with a ghillie suit, right in the trees, basically right next to the truck. I was going to go high up, do the Ohio type call, and then I was going to have Tommy reply, and we were going to start calling back and forth to each other. And then I hoped the dog would be barking in the truck, and we'd pull the family group in to check out and see what was going on. So we get up there, we get to our spot, we coordinated our watches, and I said, okay, Tommy, at 1:30, I'm going to do the Ohio call, and then you're going to reply back. And he goes, perfect. And we split up, and I took the husband, his name was Chris, with me, and we went up and we were hiking up this road. And then we got up on the highest point and we stopped and sat down. And then Tommy and Chris's wife dropped down lower. And so we were probably about a half a mile apart from each other. And I'm sitting there watching the time, and Chris goes, "Do you hear that rock clacking?" I said, "No." There were rocks being hit against each other. Every other person up there except me heard the rocks. What I started hearing was the owls going off. And we're listening to the owls hooting, and all of a sudden I hear Tommy doing his vocalization. I look at my watch and I'm going, "It's 1:25. He's early." And Chris goes, "Yeah, he's early." And I go, "What made him do that?" He goes, "I don't know." So at 1:30, I did my Ohio howl just like I was supposed to. Didn't get a reply back from Tommy. And I thought, now that's really weird. He should have heard me plain as day. And I'm sitting there with Chris, and I said, "Watch the woods carefully around us. If you see anything red, let me know, and watch for shapes moving and shifting." And he goes, "Okay." So we sat there, we watched, we didn't see anything. We sat there for an hour. No more rock clacking, but did hear owls sounding off periodically. And I finally, after an hour, I go, "Something's wrong. Let's get back down to the truck." So we get back down to the truck. Tommy's there, Chris's wife is there, James is there. Well, here's what happened. Tommy replied to what he thought was me, but it was actually the big daddy of the family group cranked off an Ohio howl down in the creek bottom. Chris and I never heard it. We were up above it, but Tommy's over on the other side and closer to the same elevation point. He heard that and he thought, "Oh, well, Greg decided to follow that old skid road and drop down towards the creek on the other side." So he replied to it thinking he was replying to me. What wound up happening was Big Daddy, definitely not happy about Tommy. He came smoking up the side of that mountain on a dead run. And Tommy had a night vision scope, and he said, "I could hear things bang, crash, snap, and the sound of something coming." He goes, "I put the night vision up, and I could see trees going like this, and something's running up the hill." And he said, "I turn and look," and I can't remember Chris's wife's name. She bolted. She was running back to the truck. She'd already had enough. Well, Tommy stood his ground until he could literally feel foot impacts. And he said, "Then that freaked me out. I got up, I ran, and I came back to the truck." And he said, "That thing was gaining ground on me." And I said, "Did you even stop to turn around and look?" He goes, "No. I wanted to get back here to the truck as fast as I could." And he said, "We thought you guys were going to be coming at any time. And of course, you didn't, because I didn't. I waited an hour." Then James heard the sound of all those crash, boom, bang. He knew something big was coming up the mountain. He got to the truck. The dog was barking in the truck the whole time, like I wanted it to. But, based on what wound up happening, we didn't get what we wanted to have happen. And I said, "Uh-oh, I may have goofed." And I was really concerned about that. And I said, "We got to get out of here. We got to let everybody de-stress. Let's leave. Let's go." And so we went to another spot, and um, we got out of that area. And then, of course, the other spot, nothing was going on. But after that experience, everybody was pretty much, "Oh man, that was," yeah. And I was like, "Well, except for the owl hoots, I missed out on all of it." But everybody else in that group, the other four humans, all heard it, all experienced it. I didn't get back there for another 2 weeks. When I went back in 2 weeks later, at first I was kind of concerned that I might have broken the trust. I might have goofed bad. But I got out, and I'm walking out through this old spur that gets out through some pretty good berry producing areas. And there's a lot of manzanita. And I'd walked out it. I hadn't seen anything, hadn't heard anything, was coming back got back to the main road, and then right there at the junction of those two roads, I'm just standing there relaxing, and then up on the hill above me, I hear the whoop, 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 and I just gave him the whoop back. And then I just sat down. There was a log right there, sat on the log, listened, could hear him moving around. Everything was kind of back to how it had been before, I did that silly messing with Sasquatch thing, trying to provoke a response. Never ever did that again, except the Appa thing. And even then with Appa, wasn't quite the same idea I had when we had that encounter with them, where literally I told everybody the game plan here is messing with Sasquatch. This is what we're going to do. We're going to try and get them to come in close and check out and see what's going on. Then they'll hear the dog and go look at the dog in the truck, and hopefully never see James over there in the trees in his mind filming them.
What about them? I guess the right term would be allowing you, or them coming in close enough to allow you, rather, to get clear pictures and or video?
Here's the thing. I kind of, for the longest time, I'm not the one who's trying to prove they exist. My viewpoint on it is, if you don't know they exist right now because of the sheer amount of evidence that's out there, I don't know how to help people beyond that point. To be perfectly honest, grew up in a religious household, grew up going to church, have read the Bible through multiple times, do believe in God, and yet I can give you more hard physical evidence that they exist than God exists. Because I truly view it that the belief of God requires more belief than the belief in Bigfoot, because we have enough hard evidence there, including 2 great videos in PGF and Freeman. That is what it is. That's not fake. That's not a guy in a monkey suit. We've got literally thousands of footprint cast, handprint cast. We've got, I don't even know how many recordings have been made that experts have listened to and said, that's not any known animal in North America. You've got 5,000 years of First Nations peoples documenting the exact same thing we're documenting today. And when you look at the masks they have done, when you look at the totem images they have done, when you look at the petroglyphs they have done, including the hairy man glyph in California, they're perfect representations of what a Bigfoot is. So you take all of that, and I think if you don't believe they exist at this point, it's because you truly don't want to. Then you've got knowers, people like me. I know exactly what I'm encountering. It is not bears. It is not anything else but what they are. Because I definitely know what a bear is, and these are not them. And I've witnessed things that bears do not do. I've heard things that bears do not do. And yeah, I struggle with this. But then again, we've got people living here that have never seen a mountain lion in the woods. And for all my years in the woods, I've only actually seen 5 cougar. 5. I've had evidence they've been around me much more than I've ever seen them, but I've only seen them 5 times. We've got another small mammal here called a miner's cat, also called a ringtail. It has a ringtail like a raccoon. They are in that same family with raccoons. We have ringtails here all over Southern Oregon. I've seen them. I've gotten lucky enough to see them, and I've talked to people that the only way they have ever seen them to know they were there are now trail cameras, which are out there for all kinds of reasons, are recording the images of ringtails / miners cats here in Southern Oregon.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. I know that anytime you are opening yourself up in an online forum or on a podcast or something, that is the devil's advocate question, right? Like, where's the picture in the video? But honestly, if any of those people that were saying that were out with the best red 4 or 8K or whatever the hell it is now camera,
Yeah.
the last thing they would think about if one stepped into the ring of the firelight would be to raise that camera. So that's just my feelings on it as well.
And you know, it's funny, the majority of people who probably have the best opportunity to make pictures and videos, they're now face to face looking at something that seconds ago they didn't believe was real. And then the adrenaline factor kicks in.
Yeah.
Then the other thing I did this year to prove people how this works, most people are now carrying cell phones. They're not carrying cameras. They're not carrying movie grade video equipment. You're carrying a cell phone. And I saw a buck this year that was in a spot that I definitely was not going to shoot it, because now I have a thing called brains. He's standing on this really steep slope. At the bottom was this huge, thick brush. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to shoot that thing because he's going to roll down that slope. He's going to go into that brush. We're never going to recover him. We don't have a good access point there. And I'm just going to create a dinner for bear or coyotes. But I started taking pictures of him with my cell phone. And I started looking at some of the images. And even though I knew what I was looking at, and even though I got 2 very good clear pictures of him, the majority were blurry. And most people would have a hard time knowing that was a deer if I wasn't telling them it was a deer. And that was me with no stress at all, being nice and calm, seeing this deer, thinking that's cool, taking the pictures. And then it hit me after I posted these pictures of this deer and people started making comments. I go, this actually is a pretty good lesson in what happens with people out there trying to take pictures or video of a Bigfoot, and especially using their cell phones, and the emotions have kicked in and they're shaking like crazy, and the cell's trying to figure out what it is you're trying to take a picture of, and blob squatch.
And they need a change of pants. Add that to the list.
Yeah. So it's pretty rare that you're ever going to get a human who's fully prepared with the right equipment. Roger Patterson was that. Roger was shooting 16 millimeter cinema grade film. Roger knew exactly what he was going to see. He just didn't know where he was going to see it in the circumstances. And then he got even luckier that he had a bright, full, sunny day, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and Patty's fully lit up in the sunshine. So that is your gold standard for a video or picture that's been done. Then the Freeman footage, Paul was also right place in the middle of the day with sunshine, but he was using one of those ubiquitous VCR video recorders that we all had back in the 90s, and it had more of that cassette looking thing, not nearly as good film as what Roger was shooting. But still, Paul knew they were there. He knew where he needed to go. As Michael, his son, tells it, the only thing he did different, he had been going to that pond right there at Deduck Springs for over a week, and he'd always been going early in the morning right after he got off work. What was different on the day that he got the footage, his daughter had a job interview. She was having trouble getting her rig running. He went over, he got it started. He was heading home. He had no intention he was going to go up there. And then something told him to go there. And he had all of his gear with him. So he goes up there at a time he had not been going and catches them fully by surprise. And that's how he got his footage. The one thing that was common between Patterson, Gimlin, and the Freeman footage goes beyond just appearances. Yes, middle of the day. Yes, sunshine. But Patty's definitely a female. We've all seen the boobs, so we know she was a female. Then you've got this subject in the Freeman footage that at first wasn't nearly as obvious was a female, but middle of the day, by water, hot weather going on. That's what most people don't know. When Roger and Bob got their footage on October 20th, 1967, 90-degree temperatures that day. Bluff Creek, good cold water, refreshing, lots of vegetation around it, lots of shade, great spot to beat the heat. And then they show up on horses, so Patty's got no idea they're coming. And then when she walks away from them, that's more deliberate than most people would have ever known, because I had heard for years Roger was telling Bob, don't leave me, because Bob rides across the creek. That's when Patty turns and look. She's looking at Bob riding across the creek. Bob's like, I want to get a better look at this thing. And Roger's yelling, don't leave me, because Roger had seen footprints of other Bigfoots, and Roger was sure we've got more than just one here, so he didn't want Bob taken off. So Patty takes off, but you notice she never runs. It's a purposeful stride. She just looked back the one time when Bob rode his horse across the creek, and she kept moving, and she's moving with purpose. And so I go up to Cliffs in August of 2023, and I listened to Michael talking about his dad's footage, as he's also releasing the Freeman Files book. And then Michael tells us that Doug Hychek had spotted something in the original video, and he kept working at it, trying to clean up what he was seeing, but he was having a problem because he's working from a lesser quality tape than what Roger had shot Patty with. But Doug kept at it, eventually produced this image, and you see the Bigfoot in the Freeman footage reach down, pick something up, and you see two legs descended down that suddenly retract up, just like babies do with humans, and have been documented seeing happen with other great primates. Those legs come up and they grab hold of Mom. At that point, Paul, I almost said Roger, Paul says, oh, there's two of them, I guess. And for years watching that video, I wasn't sure what he was meaning. I kind of had some other questions about it compared to the PGF, which I had no questions about. And then see the enhanced footage, realize that she picks an infant up off the ground and those legs come up. And the next thing you're hearing is Paul going, oh, there's two of them, I guess. And then the subject in Paul's footage is moving off through the trees. So as soon as I saw that, I began thinking back to PGF. And I was going, wait a minute. They've always talked about other footprints being there, meaning others were there. They never talked about the size. Well, Scott Volette, rest in peace, Scott, was at a Bigfoot event with Bob. And I immediately got in touch with Scott and I said, hey, ask Bob this. Those other footprints that they found from other Bigfoots, were any of those small? Scott asked Bob, got the reply on tape, and Bob said, that's a great question. Nobody's asked that. But yes, there was a smaller set of footprints. Well, Patty went the way she did, but those smaller footprints went the opposite direction. Bob started riding following those. They dropped down into another creek. There's a bunch of brush down there. Bob looked at it and went, yeah, I don't want to get down there. So he goes back to where Roger is now making the footprint casts from Patty. But that confirmed everything to tell me, now I know exactly why we had two adult females in broad daylight in the sunshine getting videoed, because the mama in our family group, no, she's there. I may have seen her move through the trees, but I've never had a good look at her. But there's definitely a mama in that group, because we keep seeing smaller footprints even to this day to indicate the presence of babies, toddlers, if you will. So when I realized what happened, Patty's doing the mother killdeer, drawing the attention of Roger and Bob to her, and the juvenile goes the opposite direction. Then, as Mike explained, the subject in the Freeman footage is a female. And as soon as Wes Summerlin, who is another legendary Bigfoot investigator in the Blue Mountains in Washington and Oregon, saw the footage, he goes, "Oh, that's Big Jill." And then he saw Paul's footprint cast he did. He goes, "Yeah, that's absolutely Big Jill." Now, I don't go crazy. My house is not overwhelmed in Bigfoot stuff. I mean, picture on the wall, not counting. I only have one footprint cast, and it's a replica, but it is from Big Jill, and I got it from Michael, helping a buddy out. He put them up on sale, and so I got one, went to Glide, got it directly from him, which, by the way, Shannon, that's where these people show up and go, "Oh, we heard you on Into the Fray with Shannon LeGroux." And I go, "Yeah, I was on." So never have had that reaction, by the way, being on any of the other podcast webcasts. So you have that. But yeah, I just, sometimes it's fun for me to break down these more historical things and actually be able to figure out things other people hadn't. And in that case, we now know what is common between the PGF and the Freeman. And as far as I know, nobody else had ever connected all those dots the way I did it.
So, Greg, it's been about almost exactly 2 years since 425. So since we've chat the last time.
Yeah.
Besides what we've already covered, has there been anything surprising or scary or just interesting that you've learned or come across in the last 2 years?
In the last 2 years, no. But you know what was funny? I was just recently interviewed on another webcast for a YouTube channel, and it was just kind of more my general background with Bigfoot. We didn't even get into the whole thing that happened with Appa. Now, this person is far more of a paranormalist. And so she asked me a question. She goes, "Have you had other things happen? UFO sightings, orbs, those kind of things?" And I said, "What's funny is the only UFO sighting I've ever had in my life happened 5 years ago in my front yard on the 4th of July. And my wife was standing there and saw it too. And we both saw the same thing, this teardrop shaped metallic thing in the sky that went from the north to the south, made no sound. And it was unbelievably fast. And my wife's kind of looked at me and goes, "Did you see that?" And I go, "Yeah, I saw something. What did you see?" And we realized we both saw the same thing. So we both couldn't have, imagined it, both of us the exact same way. We saw what we saw. The only other thing that ever happened to me, and this was actually not even Bigfoot related at that point, really didn't know I'd had a Bigfoot encounter, but I was out walking on this piece of property that some friends owned, and there was a creek in there and fish. So I'm in there fishing, and I'm walking back out to my truck, and I heard the creepiest kind of I know that wasn't Bigfoot related, but man, my blood's still running cold. As soon as I heard that, the first thing that popped into my head was, well, that was downright demonic. I think I just heard a demon. That's it. One time, just that. Um, that's about as far as my quote paranormal experiences go, because I definitely don't consider anything that's happened to me with Bigfoot. I don't consider that paranormal in any way. Some people will classify it that way, but that's because of either sheer unwillingness to accept reality, or for whatever reason. But yeah, the paranormal, I've only had those two experiences: the UFO that I saw with the wife, and that thing that just, to me, it sounded absolutely demonic. I don't believe that came from any form of wildlife. Don't believe that came from a Bigfoot. I've never heard anything exactly like that ever again. And I tried to replicate it, and that's still not exactly right. So, is what it is.
I don't recall if I asked you this, but like in the intro, I brought up how in one of your encounters you had that voice in your head a couple times that said, "Don't come up here." Now, do you
Yeah.
attribute that to a Bigfoot activity, or do you attribute that to maybe a Fey elemental spirit of the woods, totally separate thing, going, "No, Greg, it ain't your time to come around here"?
Yeah, I do believe that was 100% Bigfoot related, although that was another thing that it took until 2008 and being on the BFRO Southern Oregon expedition and then getting to talk to Rich Hucklebridge directly about it. And Huck was unequivocal. He said, "You got telepathed." And I said, "It's about the only thing that makes sense to me, because I heard that plain as day. And yet my uncle, who was not that far away because we were out there elk hunting, he didn't hear anything. He didn't see anything.
Right.
No other people were in there." So, yeah, I know that was directed right at me. And then I actually had a second telepath, and the second one was a lot more fun. I'd been hanging out all night, had pretty good activity going on around me, but I was starting to get tired, and it's starting to get on towards dawn, and I still have about a 60-mile drive to get from where I'm at to get home, get to bed. And I'm thinking, maybe I want to go. And I'm starting to get up and stretch a little bit, and all of a sudden in my head, I hear, "Don't leave, wait." Huh? "Don't leave. Wait. You will like this." Kind of a pleasant sounding voice. I'm going, okay. So after the first experience being telepath, now knowing what's going on, sat my butt back down. And as dawn is really starting to break, heard some of the most amazing vocalizations going on among the family group that I have ever heard. But they were spread out over distance. And I think this is part of what they were doing. They were just letting, okay, I'm over here, you're over there, I'm right here. It was a way to let everybody know right where they were, because as daylight's coming, it's like, okay, we're also going to need to go get in our shelter spots, and it's going to be a hot day. And listen to that. And then the coyotes are going off in response to them again. And I sat there and just soaked all that in, and the vocalizations went on for about 10 minutes. And then when it was done, it was done. And then birds are singing, and now it's really getting daylight out there. And I was like, that was really cool. I really am happy I stayed to be able to hear that. um so yeah, it's one thing to get the warning, if you will, "Don't come up here." It's another thing to, "Hey, we know you, we know what you're doing, and we think you're going to like this. Stick around a while." Because I would have missed it if I hadn't been told to stay.
Yeah, I'd say that's a heck of a tie-in to Bigfoot, if I've ever heard one. So, zipping back, pun intended, to the teardrop-shaped UFO, did you and the wife, and you're not going to know for sure, of course, I just wanted to know what your initial reactions of it was, your impressions, rather. Do you feel this was on planet from our neck of the woods, or this was something extraterrestrial?
I'm leaning extraterrestrial because I've never seen anything exactly like this. Started diving back through on the internet looking for people reporting having seen teardrop shaped craft, especially around Area 51, which, there's all kinds of things flying around Area 51 to this day that, not a lot of people are getting eyeballs on, and never saw anything in any way that approximated what this was, what I saw, what the wife saw. So, yeah, I definitely lean extraterrestrial on that one, because, again, absolutely silent, and the speed it was moving at. I've been, not directly underneath, but pretty close to SR-71 blackbirds. And blackbirds really don't make a sound either. But this was entirely different, because the speed this thing moved at was really breathtaking. No sonic boom, no nothing. And I'm wondering if the shape of it also was part of the reason why we weren't getting a sonic boom, because as fast as it was going, should have been hearing something, and there was dead silence.
That's a cool sighting. I would love to have something like that happen.
Yeah, right in my front yard on the 4th of July when I least expected it. And this was probably about 7 in the evening. So full daylight. Yeah, that was a different one. But as to portals and orbs and those kind of things, no, never seen one. But I never am going to write off anything, and especially not when so many people have described it, and including people who have a lot more to lose than I do, Les Stroud specifically, because Les has seen them. Les has interacted with them, and it's his, what I call the missing Survivor Man Bigfoot episode, number 10, that for whatever reason Travel Channel did not air. But if you look it up on YouTube, Les is going to describe a very intense encounter with orbs. And I don't doubt him for even 1 second, mainly because you can see the look on his face.
Well, Greg, let's not wait 2 years before we do this again, because I know that you're continually, you're going out, you're collecting your encounter stories. So I want you to come back on a main. But also, while I have you, I was hoping that you would be interested in coming on a live chat with me and my Patreon members, because Bigfoot is just about one of many of our favorite things. So if you'd be interested in doing that, we would love to have you over there too.
Hey, anytime. All you got to do, you just ask. We'll work it out for the timing and when I can do it. But yeah, would definitely love to do that with you. I think that would be an awful lot of fun, and especially with the live chat, giving people the ability to ask questions directly.
Yes.
Love doing that. I actually did that with a buddy of mine, James Monson. We started the chat at 6:45 in the evening. We didn't finish it until nearly midnight because people kept asking such great questions.
Yeah, that's why I love the live chats. You just do not know how they are going to go and when they will end, and that's why it's wonderful, because just the amount of rabbit holes you can go down. But you're the best, Greg. I really appreciate your time once again.
And by the way, I am sure I don't have to tell you this, but if you're not doing it already, Shannon, you got to be watching Landman, because our boy Sam joined the cast this year.
Yeah, he did. Yes, he did. Such a great show. Oh, my goodness. Yes, I certainly am. Well, thank you, Greg. And before you go, though, let everybody know where to find you, of course, on Facebook, or, anything you want to get out. You go ahead and do that.
Yeah, easiest way to do that, Southern Oregon Bigfoot Seeker over on Facebook. You always find me there. You can shoot messages to me, ask questions. I'll be happy to get back to you. But, and this is brand new, and I can make this announcement. This is the first time I've done it, so a Shannon exclusive. I definitely will be back at the Outdoorsman shows coming up at the end of January, and then through February and March. In Eugene, Oregon, Roseburg, Oregon, Medford, Oregon, Redding, Anderson, California, and then Klamath Falls, Oregon. We will definitely be discussing Bigfoot. We will definitely be discussing wolves, and would love to have people show up and tell me their stories, because, oh my goodness, have I ever heard some great reports at these shows doing the Bigfoot talks. And so I always look forward to seeing what's going to pop up at the next show, who's going to have what story for me. So I can't wait for that.
I love that in-person stuff. I miss being in Ohio just for that alone, because I was in driving distance of so many great events. There's nothing like being in person with a bunch of fellow Bigfoot lovers and just lovers of the strange and the unusual, and you just feel at home.
Yeah, and Ohio is one of those places that It took the internet, it took finding Bigfoot, it took social media, that all of a sudden people realize what a huge hotspot Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania is for just the amount of Bigfoot stories and encounters and how long they've been happening. And people kept using the more local names: Grassman, Wildman, Mountain Devil, all these things, yet it was still Bigfoot. And then once the internet really gained a foothold, once finding Bigfoot gained a foothold, social media, all of a sudden everybody's realizing, oh no, this is the same thing. Bigfoot is not just a Northern California, Oregon, Washington thing. It's all over North America, and it truly is, even out in the Great Plains. I just had a discussion with somebody about Iowa, because Matt put up some information, talked about Iowa having Bigfoot encounters, and somebody said, is that really true, and how would they get there? And I go, yes, it's true. They follow the rivers. They follow the Missouri. They follow the Mississippi. There is a state forest in Iowa that is their Bigfoot hotspot in Iowa. They even did a Finding Bigfoot episode out there, and you go through the reports and you look, okay, some of them could be misidentifications on other things, but there's others. That was 100% a Bigfoot encounter, and all the native Indian tribes to that area, all of them have a name that basically comes back to being Bigfoot or Sasquatch. There are only 6 First Nations tribes in the U.S. that do not have a name that is basically describing Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or the stories, or other things. And the other things can be pictographs, masks, those types of things. There's only 6 tribes that we have been able to determine within the U.S. that don't have Bigfoot represented in their history. And I'm going to go back to something I have heard from the Yurok and the Hoopa of Northern California. They have been with us for as long as we've been people. And I don't mean the person saying that. They're literally meaning for the tribes. Now with the Yurok, we've been able to find representations of Bigfoot going back 2,000 years. The Hoopa, about 1,500. So yeah, it's one of those things. Any spot in the United States, no matter what you think, may have a Bigfoot show up at any time. And some places, obviously, more than others. The Western U.S., Northeastern U.S., and obviously Southeastern U.S. If you want to consider the skunk ape something different, I don't. I just think that's that variant of a Bigfoot.
They're in a lot more places than people might think. That's what's wonderful about them. Yeah. Well, Greg, you guys have a wonderful day out there, and I will be in touch to schedule that live chat.
Oh, definitely. I'm looking forward to that, because live chats, short of the in-person things, the live chats online are just awesome. So I'm excited about that and can't wait to hear what comes up.